all of the failure points have been of us not being able to scale fast enough. I've always focused on acquisition and growth, and I've tried to scale that. But every time I've been successful with the acquisition and growth, I've actually seen failure points and cracks on my operations and delivery. So I think like the way I've approached it is to not think too much about it, but let that become a problem and then fix it, right? So it has guided me to acquire where we can. And then whenever we've had failure points, we step back then. What can we be doing longer term to make sure that doesn't happen, and how do we scale? My name is Ashwin, and I am the founder of MobiusEngine.ai.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries.
Spent 6 months moonlighting.
There's nothing on the back end.
Who share what it takes to change an industry.
I don't exactly know what to do
took
next.
many goes to get right.
Who built the teams that have their back.
A company is its people.
The teams help each other achieve
Most
more.
proud of our team.
Keeping scalability top of mind.
All that infrastructure was
Yes, we've been fighting it as we grow.
Total waste of time.
The stories you don't read in the headlines.
It's not an easy thing to achieve, mind
Took it
you.
off the shelf and dusted it off and tried it again.
To ride the ups and downs of the startup life.
You need to really want it.
It's not just about technology.
All this and more on Code Story. I'm your host, Noah Labhart, and today how Ashwin Agrawal is helping you land interviews 10 times faster by taking on the soup to nuts interview process. Today's episode is brought to you by .tech Domains, and this one hits close to home. Back in 2016, I was building my startup and went hunting for that perfect .com and found next to nothing. So I did what every founder does, settled. Here's what I wish someone had told me. You're building a tech startup, just get a .tech domain. It instantly tells investors and customers what you're about. Don't overthink it. Secure your .tech domain today from any registrar of your choice. This episode is sponsored by Unblocked. Unblocked is the context layer your agents are missing. It synthesizes your PRs, docs, Slack, and tickets into organizational context that agents actually understand. So they make better plans, write higher quality code, use fewer tokens, and require fewer correction loops. If you're running Claude Code, Cursor, or any agentic workflow, Unblocked is worth a look. Learn more at getunblocked.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by Mesmo. If your team is collecting large volumes of logs, metrics, and traces, but still struggling to get timely answers, Mesmo can help. Mesmo is an active telemetry platform that processes and enriches observability data in real time before it's stored or analyzed. That means lower data volume, lower cost, and faster root cause analysis across your existing observability tools. To see how it works, get a demo at mesmo.com/codestory. That's MEZMO.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by BrainGrid. If you are building with AI coding tools, but your features keep breaking, you need to check out BrainGrid. It is the product management agent for AI builders. BrainGrid turns messy ideas into clear specs, tasks, and prompts that coding agents like Cursor and Claude can actually build the right way. Ship real software, not fragile prototypes. Start free at braingrid.ai. Ashwin Agrawal came to the U.S. when he was 17 to Rochester for school. He now lives in the Bay Area and admits he misses his friends on the East Coast as they all stayed on that side of the U.S. That said, he does not miss the winters. He has been building his current venture for 3 to 4 years, and prior to that, he was at Google for a decade, a part of Google Cloud's huge growth trajectory. Outside of tech, he has a family with 2 middle school sons, with whom he likes to spend a lot of time with, hiking or eating good sushi. Ashwin was laid off from a few jobs in the past. After experiencing this, he vowed to build a solution that would help people going through this sort of experience. After the last layoff, he formed his company at 4:30 a.m. in the morning to help anyone at point A wanting to go to point B. This is the creation story of MobiusEngine.
Mobius is really a solution to making the transition of one job to another really easy, effective, and efficient for people. That's the overarching goal. And having been laid off twice, I had felt the pain. And the first time I got laid off, I decided that if I was to ever get laid off again, I'm not going to go back into trying to get another job, but I'm going to work on building the solution out. At Google, I got laid off in 2023. And I got laid off, I believe on January 11th is when I got the email at 2 a.m. in the morning. And I just gotten up to get a glass of water and I saw my phone buzzing. I saw the layoff news. I was reading the tea leaves. I expected something big was happening on the layoff front. It was still a surprise. At 2 a.m., I got that email. At 4:30 a.m., I founded my company. And I got going and there was certainly sadness and there was a lot of change. But I distracted myself in building this company and started helping other people right away. And that's how we got started in 2023. And then now we are entering the fourth year of operations. We've done quite well. We've come a long way. The overall mission has still been the same, which is for anybody who is in that point A wanting to go to point B. Either somebody who's existing, who's working currently, who's not moving up, who's feeling frustrated with their current job, or somebody who doesn't have employment, who wants to move into another job. Anyone who's making that transition, we want to be that solution to help you do that.
Let's dive into what you would consider the MVP for MobiusEngine. That first version of the product you built, maybe it was shortly after that 4:30 a.m., formation. But I'm curious about that first MVP and what sort of tools you were using to bring it to life.
So, when I was at Google, I already had been working with data analytics AI for several years before ChatGPT had come out. I was quite already engaged in the direction in which things were going, architecture was going, infrastructure was going. And so ChatGPT, when it came, was a little bit of a surprise, but I had seen ChatGPT at Google in the past with the primitive versions of Gemini. And the MVP I knew was going to be a combination of humans and AI into an agentic workflow that could do much better than any individual could in the work that's required to go from that point A to point B. So when 2022, when ChatGPT came, 2023 early days, I just learning from my own experience in the past with other things that I've seen, including cloud infrastructure, the tech stack often changes quite a bit when a new disruptive innovation comes out. Therefore, I decided to lean more on the human agentic workflows and combine that with a little bit of AI to form an MVP that was doing some of the basic tasks required from going to point A to point B. We picked up, for example, doing job applications or building resumes. So those were the couple of things that we took on, and we offered those to clients and customers to just do that much better than what they could do on their own.
This episode is sponsored by BrainGrid. Building with AI coding tools is exciting until the moment things start breaking. You ask for a small change and suddenly 3 other features stop working. AI gets confused, misses edge cases, and loses track of your intent. The problem is not code generation. The problem is planning. That is why BrainGrid exists. BrainGrid acts as your product management agent. It writes clear specification, maps UX flows, asks the clarifying questions you forgot to ask, and breaks big ideas into engineering-grade tasks that AI coding tools can build reliably. It guides Cursor, Claude Code, Replit, Windsurf, and others so they deliver features that work and keep working. Founders use BrainGrid to build real AI-native SaaS products without a technical background. If you want reliable features instead of fragile prototypes, try BrainGrid for free at braingrid.ai. That's braingrid.ai. Today's episode is brought to you by .tech domains, and this one hits close to home. Back in 2016, when I was building my own tech startup, I went on the hunt for that elusive .com. Looked high, looked low, and guess what I found? Nothing. What I did find cost me an arm and a leg. So I did what every founder does under pressure. Threw in extra letters, settled for the less than optimal name. And here's what I wish someone had said to me back then. Noah, you're building a tech startup. Just get a .tech domain. Tech startup, .tech domain. It could not be more obvious. It tells investors, customers, and anyone who looks at your website, really, that tech is at the core of your build. And I've kicked myself plenty since. Especially when I see the clean and sharp names tech companies have landed on .tech. Nothing.tech, 1x.tech, Aurora.tech, CES.tech, Ultra.tech, Alice.tech, Neon.tech, Blaze.tech, Pi.tech. You get the idea. So take it from someone who learned it the hard way. If you're building a tech startup, don't overthink it. Secure your .tech domain today from any registrar of your choice. So you've got the MVP and it's working. How did you put together your roadmap? How did you build that? And I'm curious about, what sort of criteria or process you went through to help you decide that, okay, this is the next most important thing to build or to address with MobiusEngine.
I didn't really build any roadmap. I was bootstrapping the company. As much as I'd like to think that I was in a really good financial place after the severance, I wasn't. I needed the money, right? So I needed to bootstrap, and I knew that I had to be very careful with where I invest and how much money I sink in. So there were two guiding principles that I had set for myself. One was that I'm going to be extremely customer driven. So instead of me deciding what I want to build, I'm going to build what clients and customers are willing to pay for and they want. So that was my first guiding principle. The other guiding principle that I had was in terms of delivery, I wanted to stay cash positive from my first client onwards. So I wanted to be profitable right from my first client, not wait for that profitability to come. And so by putting those two constraints, I think it took me down a path that can actually be very different than what most people think about design thinking or product roadmaps or build and iterate. I just took a very pragmatic, business-like approach where I didn't have any money to invest, and I wanted to make sure that I'm adding value to my customers, and I wanted to make a little bit of money from the very beginning.
So then, how have you built your team? How did you go about deciding that, okay, these are the winning horses to join you to go build MobiusEngine?
A lot of people have come and gone at Mobius, as typically would happen in an early stage company, particularly one that is being bootstrapped. I've relied on people who I knew, and I think my board is a group of people who are extremely talented at what they do. They're amazing, but more importantly, they are people who I trust and who trust me. And they have been my sort of support system and the people who have been very critical for me in being able to traverse this journey. I've run small businesses before, but never of this scale, never relying on it for my day-to-day living. I think that group has come from the people who I knew from my network, but more importantly, the people who I really connected with on a interpersonal level. I think that sort of has been my guiding principle for everyone I've worked with and everyone who I've hired and everyone who I've partnered with throughout. When you are doing something of your own, which is so much more high stakes than a job, I think I've leaned more on what I feel about the person rather than what I know about the person. Less on the credentials, it's more about, do I feel I can trust them? Do I feel that they have my best interest and I have their best interest? So it's very much chemistry based. That's how I have worked with and built this team. And I continue to do that. I think I trust my gut instinct a lot in terms of how will we work together? How will we deal with conflicts or deal with tough situations, or more than is this person going to be like the most stellar person at this particular skill set or that skill set?
This episode is sponsored by Mesmo. If you're responsible for reliability, performance, or platform architecture, you already know the problem. Telemetry volume is growing faster than teams can manage it. Mesmo addresses this by moving observability upstream. Instead of storing everything and asking questions later, Mesmo processes telemetry in motion, filtering, transforming, and enriching logs, metrics, and traces before they reach your observability backend. The result is cleaner data, reduced ingestion costs, and faster root cause analysis using the tools you already rely on. Mesmo integrates with platforms like Datadog, Dynatrace, and open source stacks, giving teams more control without adding operational overhead. This is especially useful for platform engineers and SREs supporting complex distributed systems where context and speed matter. To see how active telemetry works in practice, get a demo at mesmo.com/codestory. That's mezmo.com/codestory. Okay, let's flip to scalability then. I'm curious about how you've approached scale from the beginning. It could be technology, it could also be business and people and things like that. How you approached it, and have there been interesting areas where you've had to fight scale as you've grown?
There have been 3 or 4 failure points actually for us, and all of the failure points have been of us not being able to scale fast enough. It's been very interesting learning for me that I've always focused on acquisition and growth, and I've tried to scale that. But every time I've been successful with the acquisition and growth, I've actually seen failure points and cracks on my operations and delivery. So I think like the way I've approached it is to not think too much about it, but let that become a problem and then fix it. Again, like as I said, my guiding principle has been that profitability and the customer first approach, right? So it has guided me to just acquire where we can. And then whenever we've had failure points, we step back then, and I've looked back at what were those cracks, what were those seams that burst, and what can we be doing longer term to make sure that doesn't happen, and how do we scale? There have been learnings at each of the failure points. For example, the first time that happened, it was this aspect about people, like how much services and how much technology. And so we then started building a lot more tech and reducing the reliance on people. Then another failure point we had was there was a typhoon in the Philippines. The Philippines has a lot of typhoons. So anybody who has operations there realizes that can be very disruptive. I then diversified to other countries so that we could have some failover plans and be able to scale more effectively. Then other places we've had issues with operations and delivery, and there I've built a lot of systems internally, and instead of relying on third-party SaaS systems, both for cost reasons but also for scalability, I've built my own homegrown systems to get more of that customer 360, to have more control on exactly what to build, less training baggage on our teams, on myself, and having more access to data so that we can be more streamlined. I think at this point we've done with that journey. I think the other thing that has always led me into scalability is the business metric of profitability, because you realize that if you're not scalable, your margins get extremely impacted. And if you're building a business that is well run and well designed, not only are you solving for scalability, but you're also solving for expanded margins when you grow. So that has been another sort of way that I've always had a reason to think about it, because unscalable businesses are often unprofitable.
So as you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built, with MobiusEngine in particular, what are you most proud of?
I think the best part about the company that I've built is the mission of the company. And the proudest part is all the successful stories that we have had with people not only finding roles, but also being able to rethink and regain their confidence in themselves and in their careers. And really, there have been some stories where people have really gained a tremendous amount from our services. And I think that probably is what keeps all of us at Mobius going. Whenever our clients get interviews, whenever our clients get jobs, whenever our clients have something positive to say, whenever our clients tell us that I am able to take care of my newborn baby because of your service, or I am able to take care of my sick mother because of your service, those moments are extremely proud moments for us. So I get very driven by that. I think even at Google, right, as a manager, like I always enjoyed growing people and developing people. So it's been nice to be continuing to do that at scale in the thousands now. So I think that's been the best thing. I think the other part on a personal front that I have most proud about is being able to create a better balance for myself for being able to spend time with my kids. And I think being able to do that right after layoff, I spent so much time with my boys. I was being able to do that. Even though I was working hard at my company, I think the flexibility allowed me to spend time with them way more than I would have had I been in a full-time job. So I think both those things, helping the people, helping our clients, and then also being able to spend time with my boys, I think both those things are very happy things for me to think about.
Let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
I've made a lot of people mistakes. I've been both impatient with people and given up on people a little bit too soon. And I have also not given up on people soon enough. Both those things are mistakes that I've made. And I think I continue to learn how to judge, but I also don't beat myself too much over it, because in a growing company, there's just so much happening. There's just so many phases of that company that somebody who's right for one phase of the company may not be right for the next phase. And that phase in a growing company comes very quickly. In the first couple of years, every 3 months, we were completely transforming. So the person who was the right person for that initial phase was just not the right person or not able to evolve enough for the next phase. And so I think that's one mistake. I think the other mistake that I have made is signing for long-term contracts with vendors just because it was working out well at a certain time. And that was a bit of an expensive mistake. I avoided doing that, but on one of the platforms, we actually spent quite a significant amount. We were getting good ROI, and we were basically told really good stories for the future. And I think it was our mistake as well. We didn't do enough due diligence, and we signed a 2-year contract. And 2 months after signing the contract, they changed some policies, which completely plummeted our ROI. And that was a bit of a money sink. And so I think I've also learned that long-term contracts can be quite risky. So you have to be very careful about that as a young company. It's better to pay a little bit premium, but it's not great to tie yourself up with anything long-term that can cost you money.
This episode is sponsored by Unblocked. Your coding agents have access to your code base. Maybe you even connected other tools via MCPs. But access doesn't mean context. Agents can't reason across MCPs. They don't know your architectural decisions, your team's patterns, or why the API was shaped the way it is. So agents look in the wrong place and deliver bad outputs. Then you spend time correcting. More loops, more tokens. Unblocked is the context layer your agents are missing. It synthesizes your PRs, docs, Slack, and tickets into organizational context that agents actually understand. So they make better plans, write higher quality code, use fewer tokens, and require fewer correction loops. If you're running Claude Code, Cursor, or any agentic workflow, Unblocked is worth a look. Learn more at getunblocked.com/codestory. Okay, Ashwin, let's move forward. This will be exciting. What does the future look like for MobiusEngine, for the product, the company, and for your team?
Yeah, our vision for Mobius is that we want it to be the go-to marketplace or platform for anybody who is looking to go from A to B and anybody who's looking to hire. There's a huge gap in the market right now of that whole workflow being very fragmented and broken. Job seekers or people who are making the transition have a very fragmented ecosystem, and there is a lot of dishonesty in that ecosystem in terms of taking advantage of the need of wanting to go from A to B, but not exactly providing services with the right intent to add value. So some of them are overselling their value proposition, and some of them are just not adding any value at all. but it's very fragmented, right? So as somebody who's making that transition, it's very tough. And for enterprises who are hiring, it's a very expensive process right now, and it is very slow. And so we see a future where there are no middlemen or middlewomen. For that marketplace is 100% smooth between the person who's seeking a role and the person who's looking to hire. So that's the world I see, whether it's going to happen in 3 years or 5 years. But our company is betting on that future and hopefully playing a role in establishing that future where we are really streamlining and we are removing all that friction for both the enterprises as well as the job seekers.
Let's switch to you, Ashwin. Who influences the way that you work? Name a person or many persons or something you look up to and why.
I think one of the core values of that I run with, as well as our company runs with, obviously because I'm the founder, which I value a lot, is the principle of integrity. And I think all the way from the way we have designed our pricing, to the way we treat our customers, to the way we work with our partners and the way we design our services, as well as our marketing and promotions, integrity is very important. And I would say that a big influence in my life on that particular front has been my father. And I think I have always carried that. I think for me as the older son, there's always been this aspect of being like him. And so one of the things I've always admired about him is to what lengths he would go to maintain integrity and even the perception of integrity when you could be in tricky situations. I think that's very important. He's been a big influencer. I think in terms of the other aspects of running the business, I think all the people on my board are incredible. I get influenced by them. They're role models for me. I respect them a lot and I learn a lot from them. They are people who I know on the person front, but I think they would be the next in line on that. Overall in my life, I learn a lot from my kids. I think kids teach you a lot and my kids teach me a whole lot, right? I think I learn the value of being good, right? And I think that is a very important thing to learn from them.
Last question, Ashwin. So you're getting on a plane. You're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world and can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit?
The first advice I would give is that going down the path of entrepreneurship itself, whether it is a success or whether it is a failure, is an incredible achievement in life. Often we tend to anchor on the outcomes, and often we tend to anchor on, will this be successful, will this not be successful? And it's important, we want that to happen. But I think it is equally important to recognize that taking that step of entrepreneurship is an incredible milestone in your life. It demonstrates courage, it demonstrates bravery and taking the chance on yourself, believing in yourself, working hard, taking responsibility, taking accountability. All those things which I think are really good things in life. So as a life decision, going into entrepreneurship is an incredibly good decision. I've come to realize that through my own journey, but that's the first advice I would give. So absolutely go and do it. And I think when it comes to outcomes, I think my sort of main learning and therefore my advice would be follow the need of your customer and be absolutely obsessed with the customer's problem statement and ask yourself every single day, are you adding value to that client of yours who's paying you money for it? And would you do the same thing if you were in their shoes? And I think that is often something I've seen people miss out on because they can get so caught up in the excitement of just building or technology or being very passionate about the idea of how they are used to seeing things or how they are used to seeing the world. But it's very important to put yourself in the shoes of your customers who are actually paying you money. And I think I'll add another thing. I think something that I've spoken to many founders with as well is that try to get to that point early where you can test if somebody is willing to pay for your product or not. Prototyping is good. Testing with testing or testing with alpha testers and beta testers is good. But when somebody pays for your service, whether even if it's $1, it's a huge milestone. It's much bigger than people think. Because when you are getting into that transaction and you're paying money, you're expecting value back. And so it's a great proof point. If somebody is willing to pay for your product, it's a great proof point that your product has added some amount of value to the other person. And you can test out the pricing, but it's a non-zero value that you've added. So that's a big milestone. So I always say that build something, but get it to market fast.
That's fantastic advice. Well, Ashwin, thank you for being on the show today, and thank you for telling the creation story of MobiusEngine.
Thank you so much, Noah. Thank you for having me.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.